Okay, so think about this. A single horrific event that could just shatter a nation that's already deep in a war. Well, that's what we're talking about today. We're going to dive into the Speicher Massacre. It was this moment, it almost sent Iraq spiraling into this endless cycle of revenge killings. But, and this is the incredible part, we're also going to look at the amazing effort to pull the country back from that brink. So let's just try to picture this scene, right? You're in a plain old conference room in a Baghdad hotel, but the air, it is so thick with tension, you could cut it with a knife. You've got these 16 tribal leaders all in their robes, and they are just seconds away from open conflict. And look, these aren't just some politicians arguing. No. They represent entire communities just overflowing with grief and rage. The whole thing is so fragile that one of the most powerful sheiks there, he's already jumped out of his chair, ready to walk out. And if he does, the whole peace process just collapses. Boom, gone. And this is what it's all about. This is the heart of the problem. The accusations being thrown across that table are just devastating. We're talking about claims that certain Sunni tribes didn't just, look the other way, but that they actually helped ISIL in a massacre. They even joined in the killings. This one meeting, you guys, is the result of months and months of incredibly risky behind-the-scenes work, all to stop a new wave of sectarian violence. And in this moment, it is literally about to fall apart. So, if we're going to understand the pure, raw anger in that room, we have to rewind. We have to go back to the original trauma. So the big question is, what in the world happened at Camp Speicher that ignited this firestorm? All right, so let's set the scene. It's June 2014. The extremist group ISIL is just tearing across northern Iraq like a wildfire. And just so we're all on the same page, ISIL is a militant Sunni group, right? And their rise is pouring gasoline on these really deep sectarian tensions with Iraq's Shia majority. Well, their brutal march brings them right to the doorstep of a military base near Crete. It's called Camp Speicher. 1,700. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's the estimated number of young, unarmed Air Force cadets who were systematically executed, and most of them were Shia. When you talk about the sheer scale and the brutality of it, this is still one of the single deadliest atrocities of the entire conflict. It's just staggering. And look at how fast this all goes down. It's terrifying. Within just 24 hours of Tikrit falling, the base is completely surrounded. The cadets are in total chaos. They're told it's safe to leave, that they'll be fine. So they try to flee, right? A lot of them even change into civilian clothes, but it's a trap. They walk right into it. ISIL militants, and this is key, allegedly with help from some local Sunni tribes, they just round them up and start executing them. Just like that, a military base turns into a killing field. Okay, and this word right here, complicity, it is everything in this story. Look, ISIL were absolutely the ones who pulled the triggers. But it's the accusation of complicity, the idea that local Sunni tribes helped, that they pointed out who was who, helped capture them, maybe even killed some of the fleeing Shia cadets. That's what turned this from a horrific war crime into a deeply, deeply sectarian crisis. It's what lit the fuse for revenge. And listen to this. This quote from a survivor just shows you the staggering levels of betrayal here. It's gut-wrenching. He and other survivors, they later testified that their own commanders were the ones who told them to leave the base. They were promised safe passage. They were assured the local tribes would protect them, and instead, they were totally abandoned, just led to their own slaughter. So, as you can imagine, an atrocity on this scale, it sent shockwaves through the entire country. This wasn't just about the 1,700 men who were killed. No. This massacre ripped open old, deep wounds and carved out brand new ones. It pushed communities all across Iraq right to the breaking point. And what you see here are basically two parallel worlds of pain and fear. On one side, you have the Shia community just reeling from what was clearly a targeted sectarian slaughter. And to make it even worse, ISIL was pumping out these horrific propaganda videos, just pouring salt in the wound. But then, on the other side, you have Sunni communities in that area who are absolutely terrified. They're facing these blanket accusations, this collective blame, and they're staring down the very real threat of revenge from powerful Shia militias. Thousands had to just pack up and flee their homes. So what about the government's response in all this? Well, initially, it was pretty much a mix of deflection and damage control. They were scrambling. They tried to control the story, downplaying the sectarian part of it, and instead blaming remnants of Saddam Hussein's old Ba'ath Party. They couldn't even get the numbers straight at first, and while they offered money to the families of the missing, what those families really wanted were answers. They wanted justice, not just a check. Okay, So the country is literally teetering on the edge of a full-blown revenge war. This is where the story takes a turn. A super high-stakes peace-building effort kicks off. You've got organizations like the U.S. Institute of Peace working with their trusted Iraqi partners on the ground, and they basically decide to step right into this minefield of trauma and mistrust to see if they can somehow pull everyone back from the edge. And let's be really clear here, this was not a quick fix. Not at all. It was this painstaking, step-by-step process. I mean, first, just getting these enemies to sit in the same room and talk to each other, that was a huge achievement in itself. Then came the really hard part, the actual dialogues, letting them air all their grievances, all their anger and fear. The whole goal was to get from just talking to actually doing something, getting public commitments that could de-escalate everything, and at the end of the day, make it safe for all those displaced families to finally go home. So after all those tense meetings, all those delicate negotiations, it all came down to this, one single moment, a public press conference, a formal declaration that honestly, just a few months before, would have seemed completely impossible. This one event had the power to change everything on the ground, to stop that slide into even more violence. And you know what? This breakthrough wasn't just for show. It wasn't just symbolic. What we're about to see is how this one diplomatic move actually translated into real, tangible, life-changing results for thousands of people who had lost absolutely everything. This right here was the game changer. The leaders of the main Sunni tribes who had been accused of being involved, they stood up in public, denied their tribes were involved, and, this is the most important part, they pledged to help bring any of their own tribe members who were guilty to justice. Now, in a culture where that could easily be seen as a sign of weakness, this was just an extraordinary act, a huge step toward de-escalation. And here's the immediate result of that pledge. You want to talk about impact? Over 1,000 families. That's how many displaced Sunnis were able to go home, and not in months, but within weeks. That public statement literally unlocked the door. It allowed them to get on buses and go back to their communities, sometimes escorted by the very same Shia militias they had been so afraid of. It's just incredible. And you have to understand, this was about so much more than just Tikrit. This fragile peace, it was a test case for the whole country. The big question was, could the Shia-dominated government actually reintegrate Sunni areas that were being taken back from ISIL? I mean, the future of a unified Iraq was literally hanging in the balance. This was a hopeful first step for sure, but a very, very fragile one. But, and this is a really important but, reconciliation to stop more violence isn't the same thing as justice. Not at all. When the mass graves were discovered in 2015, it started this long, incredibly painful process of accountability. Dozens of men have been executed for their part in the massacre. Arrests are still being made, even as recently as May 2024. But for the families of the victims, the whole process feels painfully slow. And when some suspects get acquitted because there's not enough evidence, well, it just means that the search for what they see as full justice is nowhere near over. So what happened in Tikrit is amazing, right? It shows there's a path away from just pure revenge, a path towards a kind of functional peace. It's a remarkable achievement that definitely prevented more bloodshed. But it also leaves us with this really tough final question. Can a nation truly deeply heal when justice is still being sought? What does it actually take to mend a country that's been so completely fractured by a trauma like this, especially when the skills of justice and healing are still so precariously balanced?